My wife came back from that conference, glowing like she'd discovered the secret to happiness. New clothes, perfect makeup, humming around the house. I should have been happy for her, but something felt wrong. When the lab results came in, her glow instantly vanished. My name is Daniel Hutchinson. I'm 48 years old, and I've been running a chain of fast food franchises across 3 states for the past 15 years. Built it from nothing. Started with one little burger joint and worked my butt off until I had 27 locations. My wife Lorraine and I have 4 kids. Braden, who's 17, Kylie, who's 15, Colton, who's 12, and our baby girl Paisley, who just turned 9. At least, that's what I thought until everything fell apart. The thing about building a business from scratch is that it consumes you. 60-hour weeks become normal. Missing dinner becomes routine. Your wife starts handling more and more of the household stuff, and you start thinking she's just being supportive. You don't notice when she stops complaining about your long hours. You don't question why she's suddenly so understanding about weekend business trips. Lorraine had always been involved in the kids' school activities. PTA meetings, fundraisers, teacher conferences. She handled it all. So it made her feel useful while I was building our future. I was grateful, honestly. Having a partner who managed the home front meant I could focus on expansion without worrying about the kids or household drama. But there were signs I chose to ignore, like how she started dressing differently for those school meetings. Designer clothes instead of her usual jeans and sweaters. Professional makeup when she used to just throw on some lipstick. New perfume that smelled expensive. When I'd compliment her, she'd just smile and say she wanted to look nice for the other parents. Then there were the overnight conferences. Educational seminars for parent volunteers, she called them. Said they helped her be a better advocate for our kids' education. These events happened every few months, usually in nearby cities. She'd come back energized, talking about new programs and initiatives. I thought it was great that she'd found something she was passionate about. My dad, Harold, who's 72 and still sharp as a tack, tried to warn me once. He'd been around the block a few times, married to my mother for 45 years before she passed. We were having beers on his back porch last summer when he brought it up. "Danny," Harold said, using the name only he still called me. "You paying attention to what's happening at home?" I told him everything was fine, that Lorraine was just really involved with the kids' school. He gave me that look, the one that said I was being naive. "Son, I've seen a lot of marriages in my time. When a woman starts changing how she looks and where she goes without her husband, there's usually a reason." I brushed him off, told him he was being old-fashioned, that modern marriages worked differently. Women had their own interests and activities. I was actually proud that Lorraine had found her own thing instead of just waiting around for me to come home from work. Now I realized my dad wasn't being paranoid. He was being protective. Eugene Brennan, his old fishing buddy and poker partner, had been acting strange too, canceling their regular Wednesday night games, making excuses about family obligations. Dad probably put 2 and 2 together long before I did. The kids seemed happy enough. Braden was doing well in his senior year, already talking about college applications. Kylie was involved in drama club and always had friends over. The younger 2 were typical kids, homeware battles and video game negotiations. Our house felt normal, functional even. But normal was an illusion I'd built around myself. While I was counting profits and planning new locations, my world was rotting from the inside out. And the woman I trusted most in the world was the one holding the match. The weekend Lorraine went to her Regional Education Excellence Conference in Indianapolis should have been my first real wake-up call. She'd been talking about this event for weeks, saying it was a 3-day intensive workshop for parent advocates. Big opportunity to network with education professionals from across the Midwest. Friday morning, she was up early, humming while she packed. I remember thinking she seemed more excited than usual for a school-related trip. Her suitcase was carefully organized, new outfits I'd never seen, expensive lingerie that definitely wasn't for sleeping alone in a hotel room. When I commented on the fancy clothes, Lorraine just laughed it off. "I want to make a good impression, Danny," she said, applying more makeup than she wore to most formal events. "These conferences are about building professional relationships." She kissed me goodbye and promised to call when she got settled. Then she was gone, leaving me with the kids for the weekend. Nothing unusual there. I'd handled solo parent duty plenty of times before. But Sunday evening when she returned, something was different. Lorraine practically floated through the front door, her face glowing with this satisfied contentment I hadn't seen in years. Her hair was perfectly styled, her clothes wrinkle-free despite traveling all day. She moved with this confident energy, like she'd just experienced something transformative. "How was the conference?" I asked, helping her with her bags. "Amazing," Lorraine replied, her voice dreamy. "Absolutely life-changing. I learned so much about innovative education approaches." She went on about collaborative learning methods and student advocacy techniques, but something felt rehearsed about her enthusiasm, like she prepared these talking points for my benefit. The details were vague, generic education buzzwords without the specific passion she usually showed for school-related topics. That night, she was different in bed too. More affectionate than she'd been in months, initiating intimacy with an enthusiasm that caught me off guard. Afterward, lying in the dark, I tried to convince myself that the conference had simply reinvigorated her passion for education and family life. But deep down, something felt wrong. The expensive new clothes, the professional makeup, the satisfied glow, none of it quite added up to a weekend spent in conference rooms listening to education presentations. I pushed the doubts aside, telling myself I was being paranoid. My wife had found something that energized her, and I should be grateful instead of suspicious. If only I'd trusted my instincts instead of my hopes. 3 weeks after that Indianapolis conference, I made a decision that would change everything. The nagging feeling in my gut wouldn't go away, and my dad's warnings kept echoing in my head. So I called a guy Wesley knew, a private investigator named Rick Sullivan, who specialized in domestic cases. "I feel like an idiot even calling," I told Sullivan during our first meeting at a diner outside town. "Trust your instincts," Sullivan replied, sliding a contract across the table. "Most guys who call me already know the truth. They just need proof." I hired him on a Thursday. By the following Tuesday, Sullivan called with preliminary findings that made my blood run cold. "Your wife's been meeting with 2 different men regularly," he said over the phone. "One's a teacher at your daughter's school, Trevor Kane. The other's an older gentleman named Eugene Brennan." Eugene, my dad's poker buddy. The man who'd been like an uncle to my kids, who'd attended every birthday party and family barbecue for the past 20 years. "Are you certain about Eugene?" I asked, hoping Sullivan had made some mistake. "Positive identification. Hotel security footage shows them checking in together last month. Same weekend your wife told you she was at that conference in Fort Wayne." The betrayal hit me like a freight train. It wasn't just my wife lying to me. It was a man I trusted completely, someone my father considered his closest friend. Eugene had sat at our dinner table, played with my children, looked me in the eye while hiding this massive deception. Sullivan continued his report. "The teacher situation appears more recent. Coffee meetings that turn into extended afternoon visits to his apartment. Your wife's car's been spotted there multiple times during school hours." I felt sick. Trevor Kane taught at Kylie's high school. He'd been her English teacher last year, someone we'd trusted with our daughter's education. The professional relationship I'd thought was about Kylie's academic success was apparently something much more personal. "How long?" I managed to ask. "Based on what I've documented, the relationship with Kane started about 8 months ago. The older gentleman, that goes back much further. Possibly years. Years. While I've been building my business empire, working 60-hour weeks to provide for my family, my wife had been building relationships with other men. The conferences, the school meetings, the overnight trips, all elaborate cover stories for her affairs. I need more evidence, I told Sullivan. Concrete proof that will hold up in divorce court. Already working on it, he replied. But Mr. Hutchinson, you should prepare yourself. Based on what I've seen so far, this situation is more complicated than you might think. I hung up the phone and sat in my office for a long time, staring at the family photo on my desk. 4 smiling children who had no idea their world was about to collapse. A wife whose smile now looked like a mask hiding decades of lies. That night, I couldn't even look at Lorraine during dinner. Every word she spoke, every laugh she shared with the kids, felt like another knife in my back. 2 months after hiring Sullivan, I had enough evidence to destroy Lorraine's carefully constructed lies. But before I confronted her, I needed one more piece of the puzzle, the truth about my children's paternity. DNA testing used to be complicated, but these days you can order a discrete kit online. I collected samples from all 4 kids during routine opportunities: Braden's water glass, hair from Kylie's brush, Colton's toothbrush, Paisley's juice box. Simple, undetectable, and completely legal since I was their legal father. The results arrived on a Tuesday morning. I opened the envelope in my office, hands shaking as I read the genetic analysis report. Colton and Paisley were definitively mine. But Braden and Kylie, the two children I'd raised for 17 and 15 years respectively, showed no genetic relationship to me whatsoever. I had to read the report 3 times before the reality sank in. 2 of my children weren't mine. Braden, who looked just like Eugene Brennan when you really studied his features. Kylie, whose artistic talents I'd always attributed to Lorraine's side of the family. The timeline made horrific sense. Braden was born 18 years ago, right around the time Eugene's marriage fell apart, and he started spending more time at our house. Kylie's birth coincided with when Lorraine became heavily involved in school activities and began developing professional relationships with teachers. That evening, I sat Lorraine down in our living room after the younger kids were in bed. Braden and Kylie were upstairs doing homework, unaware that their entire world was about to change. "We need to talk," I said, placing the DNA results on a coffee table between us. Lorraine's face went white as she read the document. The confident glow she'd been carrying for months vanished instantly, replaced by raw panic. "Danny, I can explain," she started, but I held up my hand. "No more lies, Lorraine," I said firmly. "I know about Eugene. I know about Trevor Kane. I know about the hotels, the fake conferences, all of it." She opened her mouth, then closed it, realizing that her usual manipulation tactics wouldn't work this time. For the first time in our marriage, I had all the cards. "The question now," I continued, keeping my voice steady and controlled, "is whether you're going to tell our children the truth, or if I am." Lorraine began crying, not the gentle tears of remorse, but the desperate sobs of someone who'd been caught and knew there was no way out. "Please don't destroy our family," she whispered. "Our family," I replied, standing up and looking down at the woman who'd been lying to me for nearly 2 decades. "You destroyed our family the moment you decided that I wasn't enough for you." The glow was gone. The confident woman who'd returned from that Indianapolis conference was replaced by someone desperate and defeated. And for the first time in months, I felt like I was finally seeing the real Lorraine. The next morning, I made 3 phone calls that would change everything. First, I called my lawyer. Second, I called my dad to warn him about what was coming. Third, I called Eugene Brennan and told him to meet me at Murphy's Bar at noon. "We need to talk," I said when Eugene answered. "Sure, Danny. What's this about?" Eugene replied, his voice casual and unsuspecting. "You'll find out." Murphy's was nearly empty at midday. Eugene walked in looking relaxed, probably thinking this was about business or family news. When he saw my expression, his demeanor changed immediately. "Sit down," I said, not offering to shake his hand. Eugene slid into the booth across from me, his eyes wary. I placed a photo on the table, one of Sullivan's surveillance shots showing Eugene and Lorraine entering a hotel together. "Explain this," I said calmly. Eugene's face went white. He stared at the photo for a long moment, then looked up at me with something resembling shame. "Danny, 17 years, I interrupted. 17 years you've been sleeping with my wife and lying to my face. 17 years you've been playing grandfather to your own son while betraying my father's friendship." Eugene tried to speak, but I held up my hand. "Braden looks just like you," I continued. "Same eyes, same jawline. I was too blind to see it before, but DNA doesn't lie. It wasn't supposed to happen," Eugene said quietly. "But it did happen. Repeatedly. For years." I leaned forward. "Did you think about my dad when you were with her? Did you consider what this would do to a 72-year-old man who considers you his closest friend?" Eugene couldn't meet my eyes. "Harold doesn't have to know. Harold already knows something's wrong. He's the one who tried to warn me." I stood up. "You have 48 hours to tell him yourself, or I will." I left Eugene sitting there with the photo, knowing I'd never see him again as anything other than the man who helped destroy my family. That afternoon, I drove to the high school and requested a meeting with Trevor Kane. The principal's office was awkward, explaining to an administrator that I needed to confront my daughter's teacher about his affair with my wife. When Trevor walked into the conference room, his confident teacher persona vanished the moment he saw my expression. "Mr. Hutchinson," he said nervously, "is this about Kylie's grades?" "This is about you sleeping with my wife," I replied directly. Trevor's face flushed red. I think there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding. I have photos, hotel receipts, and a DNA test proving you're Kylie's biological father. The young man collapsed into a chair, his hands shaking. 15 years ago, you had an affair with a married woman, I continued. Now you're teaching your own daughter while lying to everyone about your relationship to her. I never knew, Trevor whispered. Lorraine never told me. Well, now you know. And now you have a choice. Resign quietly, or have this become public knowledge. I left him there to consider his options, knowing that by Monday morning, Central High would need a new English teacher. That evening, I gathered all 4 children in the living room. Lorraine sat beside me, her face streaked with tears, knowing what was coming. This was the conversation I dreaded most, telling my kids that everything they believed about our family was a lie. Kids, your mother and I have something important to tell you. I began, looking at each of their faces. Braden, 17 and perceptive, already sensed trouble. Are you getting divorced? Yes, I said simply. But there's more you need to know. I took a deep breath. I've discovered that your mother has been having relationships with other men. For many years. Kylie gasped. Colton looked confused. Paisley, at 9, didn't fully understand but knew something was seriously wrong. Braden, I continued, your biological father is Eugene Brennan. Kylie, yours is Trevor Kane, your English teacher from last year. The silence was deafening. Braden stared at me in shock. Kylie began crying immediately. What does that mean? Colton asked. It means Braden and Kylie have different biological fathers than you and Paisley. I explained gently. But you're all still my children. I've raised you, loved you, and that will never change. Braden stood up abruptly. Eugene? Dad's poker buddy Eugene. Yes, I said. And Mr. Kane? Kylie whispered. My teacher. Lorraine finally spoke. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never wanted you to find out this way. Braden turned on his mother. You lied to us our entire lives. Braden, please, Lorraine started. No, he shouted. You made us live a lie. Eugene's been coming to our house, playing grandfather, knowing he was my real father. That's sick. Kylie was sobbing now. Mr. Kane knew he was my dad when he was teaching me, when we had parent conferences. I don't think he knew, I said honestly. But your mother did. The room erupted in angry voices and tears. Colton and Paisley clung to me, terrified by their siblings' reactions. Braden stormed out, slamming the front door. Kylie ran upstairs. I looked at Lorraine, who was crying harder than I'd ever seen. This is what betrayal looks like, I told her quietly. Not just to me, but to our children. They'll never trust you the same way again. How we fix this? She whispered. We don't, I replied. You broke something that can't be repaired. Now we all have to live with the consequences. That night, I found Braden sitting on the front porch. I sat beside him without speaking. Am I still your son? He asked finally. You're absolutely my son, I said firmly. DNA doesn't change 17 years of being your father. Eugene donated genetic material, but I raised you. I'm your dad. Braden nodded, tears in his eyes. What happens now? Now we figure out how to move forward as a family, even though everything's changed. It would take time, therapy, and a lot of difficult conversations. But my children needed to know that despite their mother's lies, they still had one parent they could trust completely. The hardest conversation of my life was telling my father about Eugene's betrayal. Harold Hutchinson had trusted Eugene Brennan for 50 years, through Vietnam, failed businesses, deaths of spouses, and raising families. Breaking that trust would destroy more than just their friendship. I drove to Dad's house Sunday morning, finding him in his workshop restoring an old radio. He looked up when I entered, immediately sensing something was wrong. Danny, you look like hell, Harold said, setting down his tools. Dad, we need to talk about Eugene, I said, closing the workshop door behind me. Harold's face darkened. What about him? I pulled out one of Sullivan's photographs showing Eugene and Lorraine together. He's been having an affair with Lorraine for 17 years. Braden is his son. The color drained from my father's face. He stared at the photo for a long moment, then carefully set it on his workbench. You're certain? He asked quietly. DNA test confirms it. Private investigator has documented everything. I sat down beside him. Dad, I'm sorry. I know how much his friendship means to you. Harold was silent for several minutes, processing the magnitude of the betrayal. Finally, he spoke. 50 years, he said, his voice heavy with pain. Through war, marriages, divorces, raising kids. I trusted him with everything. I know. Braden calls him Grandpa Gene, Harold continued, anger creeping into his voice. My grandson. Except he's not my grandson, is he? He's Eugene's boy. I watched my 72-year-old father struggle with emotions I'd never seen from him before. Harold Hutchinson was a tough man who'd survived combat and build a successful life through sheer determination. But this betrayal cut deeper than anything he'd experienced. What are you going to do about Eugene? I asked. Harold stood up slowly, his jaw set with cold determination. I'm going to visit him. Tonight. Dad, maybe you should wait. No, Harold said firmly. Eugene Brennan destroyed my son's marriage, lied to my face for 17 years, and let me treat his biological son like my grandson while knowing the truth. He's going to answer for that. That evening, Dad called me from Eugene's house. It's done, Harold said simply. Told him exactly what I thought of him. 50 years of friendship gone. He tried to apologize, make excuses. I told him he was dead to me. How did he react? Like a coward. Dad replied with disgust. Kept saying it just happened, that he never meant to hurt anyone. I told him he was a liar and a backstabber, and if I ever see him again, we'll have problems. The next day, Eugene called me. Danny, I need to talk to you about Braden, he said. No, I replied firmly. You don't get to have a relationship with him now. You gave up that right when you chose to lie for 17 years. But he's my son. He's my son, I interrupted. You were just a sperm donor who happened to be around for birthdays and baseball games. If you try to contact him directly, we'll have legal problems you won't like. Eugene's betrayal had cost him everything. His best friend, his relationship with Braden, and any respect our community had for him. That was justice enough for me. My lawyer, Jennifer Walsh, was a shark in a business suit who specialized in high-asset divorces. When I laid out the evidence of Lorraine's affairs and the paternity results, her eyes lit up like Christmas morning. This is the strongest case I've seen in 20 years, Jennifer said, reviewing Sullivan's documentation. Your wife committed adultery with multiple partners over decades. The paternity fraud alone gives us massive leverage. What are my options? I asked. Complete asset protection, business interests, real estate, retirement accounts. We can shield everything. The adultery and paternity fraud constitute abandonment of marital responsibilities. Lorraine hired her own attorney, but they were fighting an uphill battle. The evidence was overwhelming, and her lawyer knew it. During our first mediation session, Lorraine's attorney tried to negotiate. My client is willing to accept a modest settlement in exchange for shared custody, he said. Jennifer laughed. Your client committed serial adultery and paternity fraud. She's lucky Mr. Hutchinson isn't pursuing criminal charges for fraud. What do you want? Lorraine asked me directly, ignoring the lawyers. Full custody of Colton and Paisley, I said. You can have supervised visitation. The restaurant business stays entirely mine. You get the house and your car, nothing else. That's not fair, Lorraine protested. Fair? I leaned forward. Was it fair to lie to me for 17 years? Was it fair to let me raise another man's children while you carried on with multiple lovers? Her lawyer whispered something to her, probably explaining that fighting would only make things worse. The divorce was finalized 6 weeks later. I kept my business empire, got primary custody of my biological children, and Lorraine walked away with minimal assets and a reputation in ruins. Braden surprised me by choosing to live with me instead of his mother. You're the only father I've ever known, he said. I don't care about DNA. You raised me, taught me right from wrong. That makes you my dad. Kylie made the same choice. Mr. Kane might be my biological father, but he's a stranger. You're my real dad. We moved into a new house across town, a fresh start without the memories of Lorraine's lies. It was smaller than our old place, but it felt honest. The kids were in therapy, learning to process their mother's betrayal and the complicated truth about their parentage. But they were resilient, and having one parent they could trust completely made all the difference. 6 months after the divorce, I ran into Trevor Kane at a grocery store. He'd resigned from teaching and was working at a bookstore downtown. Danny, he said nervously, how is Kylie doing? She's fine, I replied coldly. She's my daughter, and she's doing well. I've been thinking about her a lot. Maybe someday. No, I interrupted. You gave up any claim to her when you slept with a married woman. Stay away from my family. Trevor nodded and walked away. He understood that some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. That night, Kylie asked me about the encounter. He wanted to know how you were doing. I told her honestly. Do you think he really cares? She asked. I think he feels guilty, I replied. But feeling guilty and being a father are two different things. You have the father you need right here. She hugged me tight, and I knew we were going to be okay. 2 years after the divorce, life had settled into a rhythm I never expected to appreciate. My restaurant empire was thriving. 3 new locations opened, and I promoted Wesley to regional manager. The business success felt different now, more meaningful because I was building it for the right reasons. The kids were healing. Braden graduated high school and chose to attend State University, majoring in business administration. He wanted to join the family company someday, carrying forward the Hutchinson name with pride despite the genetic confusion. Dad, can I ask you something? Braden said during one of our weekly dinners. Anything, son. Do you ever regret raising Kylie and me, knowing we're not biologically yours? I set down my fork and looked at him seriously. Braden, you and Kylie are the best parts of my life. DNA doesn't determine love. The years I spent teaching you to drive, helping with homework, cheering at your games, those moments made you my children more than genetics ever could. Kylie, now 17 and excelling in her senior year, had overcome her initial trauma about Trevor Kane. She was applying to colleges and dating a nice boy from her drama club. Colton and Paisley barely remembered life before the divorce. They were thriving in our new house, making friends in the neighborhood, and seemed completely unaffected by the family upheaval. Dad had recovered from Eugene's betrayal better than expected. He'd found new poker buddies and was volunteering at the Veteran Center downtown. The loss of a 50-year friendship had hurt, but Harold Hutchinson was tougher than anyone gave him credit for. You did the right thing, Danny, he told me recently. Standing up for your family, protecting the kids. That's what real men do when everything falls apart. I'd started dating again. Nothing serious, just coffee meetings and casual dinners with women who appreciated honesty over drama. It felt good to trust my own judgment again. One evening, while reviewing financial reports in my home office, I realized something profound. I was happy. Not the desperate happiness of someone trying to convince himself things were fine, but genuine contentment with a life I'd rebuilt from the ashes of Lorraine's lies. The restaurant business was booming, my children were thriving, and I'd learned to value truth over comfort. Sometimes the best thing that can happen to a man is discovering exactly what he's made of when everything he trusted falls apart. 5 years have passed since that weekend, when Lorraine came back from Indianapolis glowing with satisfaction, only to watch her carefully constructed lies crumble when the lab results exposed everything. Looking back now, I can honestly say that discovering the truth was the best thing that ever happened to me. My restaurant empire spans 6 states now, 38 locations generating millions in annual revenue. But more importantly, it's become a family legacy. Braden graduated college and joined the company as operations manager. His work ethic and integrity prove that character matters more than genetics. Kylie finished her sophomore year at Northwestern, studying journalism. She wants to be an investigative reporter, inspired by watching her father uncover the truth when others preferred comfortable lies. She calls me every Sunday, without fail. Colton, now 17, is the star pitcher on his high school baseball team with college scouts already calling. Paisley, 14, inherited my business sense and runs a successful pet-sitting operation in the neighborhood. Dad passed away peacefully last year at 77. His final words to me were, "You raised good kids, Danny. I'm proud of the man you became." Harold Hutchinson never reconciled with Eugene, and I respected that choice completely. I married Sarah 2 years ago, a veterinarian who'd been divorced herself and understood the value of building relationships on honesty rather than illusion. She loves my children as her own, and they adore her genuine warmth. Lorraine remarried some businessman from another state. I hear she's struggling financially and has limited contact with any of the kids. Braden and Kylie see her occasionally, but they've made peace with having one parent who prioritizes truth over convenience. Eugene moved to Florida and died alone last year. Neither Dad nor I attended his funeral, though Braden went to pay his respects. That gesture showed more class than his biological father ever demonstrated. Trevor Kane left teaching entirely and works in retail now. He's never attempted to contact Kylie, understanding that some bridges can never be rebuilt. Sometimes men think strength means avoiding pain or maintaining control at all costs. I learned that real strength means facing the truth regardless of how much it hurts, protecting those you love even when they're not biologically yours, and building something better from the wreckage of what others destroyed. My children know they have a father who will always tell them the truth, even when lies would be easier. That's the legacy I'm most proud of, not the business empire, but raising kids who understand that integrity matters more than comfort. The conference that brought Lorraine back glowing ultimately revealed who she really was. And more importantly, it showed me exactly who I was capable of becoming.